I'll be demonstrating how to work the little Gulls stitch pattern. It is a textured stitch that has little wings here, where it gets its Gulls name. And it's especially cute in a fine yarn for a little dainty texture. It has garter stitch in it. You can see the garter stitch columns, which help it lie flat. And these little wings are formed by a stitch known as the butterfly stitch. So I will show how that works. To work this, you will have a multiple of 8 stitches, and then I also added 3 stitches at the edge to make it symmetrical. So we're going to start out on the right side of the work by knitting 3. And then in this stockinette area where you see the wings, we will be slipping 5 stitches with yarn in front. So we'll move the yarn to the front, and we're going to slip these 5. The general rule in knitting is to always slip as if to purl, so we are going to do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we need to return our working yarn to the knit position. So we're going to move that back. We want to take care that this strand here is not too tight and also that it's not too loose. So I kind of call that the Goldilocks approach here. So we'll just then knit the next 3 stitches. We are back to slipping again, so move the yarn to the front, slip as if to purl 5 times. That's 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, the working yarn, return it back to the knit position, and then knit 3. And one last time for the last little setup of this long strand or float we'll have. So my yarn's in front, I'm slipping 5. Move the yarn back to the knit position. And if you want, you can kind of spread those stitches out to hold that, see how you would like that, the tension you would like on that long float or strand that we're going to work on the next right side row. So I'm going to end with the knit 3. And I'll turn my work to the wrong side. Now on the wrong side, probably the biggest error that you could have would be to put the stitch in the wrong column. When I flip this back over, you can see we have garter stitch, stockinette, garter, stockinette, garter, stockinette, garter. So we need to maintain that established stitch patterns. So that is going to be knit 3, purl 5. So I'm going to knit 3, purl 5, back to knit 3, sometimes I just like to flip over my work to make sure I am, yes, where I should be. So that's back to purl 5. Knit 3. Purl 5. And we'll finish the wrong side row with knit 3. All right, and when I turn back to the right side, you can see that I have 3 long floats or strands in the stockinette kind of columns here. So this is where I'm going to work the butterfly stitch. Now before we get to that part, I want you to see that that strand straddles 5 stitches, and it's the center one that's always going to get the butterfly stitch treatment. The rest of the stitches in the row are just going to be knit. So sometimes you don't even need to count. You can kind of just visually see where you need to do those. And I'll demonstrate the butterfly stitch in Western style or throwing, and also in Continental. So let's see how the 3rd row is worked. So we will knit those 3 edge stitches. And then I'm going to work my way to this center stitch. So that will be knitting 2 more stitches. And here I am to that 3rd stitch, or the center of where the butterfly stitch is going to go. So to work that, I'm going to take my right hand needle and I'm going to go underneath that strand from bottom to top. So take your right hand needle under the strand and then enter the stitch that you're going to knit, or that 3rd stitch. So we're going to then put our right hand needle in, wrap your yarn around, draw that loop through. But before you take the stitch off of your left hand needle, you've got to scoop or bring that strand underneath that long strand, this time from top to bottom. And now you can take the stitch off your left hand needle. So basically what we've done is when we knit, we have caught that strand into our stitch. And I'll knit the remaining 2 strands in the stockinette column. I will work through, I should say, the garter stitch. Here I am getting into that next, where the floats are, so I'm going to knit to this stitch. I'll knit to that 3rd or center in this stockinette column. I'm going to take my right hand needle, go underneath that float or strand from bottom to top. You can see how it ends up on your right hand needle. Enter that stitch, wrap your yarn around, draw that loop through the stitch, and then drag it underneath that strand from top to bottom, finishing the knit stitch, and then you can take it off of the left hand needle. So I'm going to work my way to the final one, and I'll show you how to work that butterfly stitch continental style. Now let me just set my hands up for continental knitting. So I'm going to knit my way to that center stitch, and there I am. So I'm going to go underneath that strand from bottom to top, enter into the stitch, knit it, drawing that loop through the stitch, underneath that long strand, and off of the needle. And then I can just knit here to the end of the row. And we'll turn our work. And the final row in the pattern is exactly like the last wrong side row. We're just going to knit the garter columns, or knit 3, and then purl 5. And when we get to the end of the row, we'll see how this interesting little stitch looks. And let's see, one more. Sometimes you get busy talking and I'm not sure which stitch needs to go next, and that was my 5th purl. So now I'm going to knit 3. Purl 5, and the final knit 3, and let's have a look at it. There we go, cute little rows of little gulls. Happy knitting!